Now, I want to move into our portfolio page. I just design something small. So I'll create an array in my JavaScript. I'll call it testimonials. This is my portfolio.js. I'll call it testimonials. And inside here, I will have multiple objects. So I just want the testimonials. Ideally, all these things will be coming from a back end, though I hope you know, in real life. All these records will be coming from a back end system, but obviously we don't have a back end yet, so we'll be creating it by ourselves here. We'll be creating these dummy data by ourselves. So now, I have my testimonials array. All my testimonials are inside. I'm going to say, let current index equal to 0. I will use this variable somewhere. Now I want to create a function. I'll use the old way of creating a function. Display testimonial, and I'm going to pass the index to it as an argument or a parameter. Remember last week we said we're going to be looking at parameters, passing parameters to our functions. So I'm passing an index. So this function, anywhere I call it, it's expecting something to be passed into it. Now let's build out our function. I'm going to do document.getElements by ID, and I'm going to try to get our testimonial text dot text content, and I'll pass testimonials, our array, index dot text. I'll explain what I've just done here. I will do the same for author, and primarily I'll do the same thing for dates. This is just our function. Now I will invoke our function below here. I'm passing current index. Right? Let me take it from the start again. So, this testimonials is our array. It has multiple, maybe users have been giving review on our websites. Multiple users have been giving different reviews on our websites, right? And we store them in our database. Let's assume that all these records is in our database somewhere. I will call from my database to my front end, and I will have access to all these records. Now, I'm building out a function so that I can display these records one by one on my page. I declared a variable first called current index, and I set it to 0, right? Remember, 0 represents my first item in my array. So if I'm going to look through this array, I want it to start from the first index 0. I now created a function called display testimonials. This function, anywhere I call it, is expecting me to pass an index to it. So this is just a placeholder for an argument or a parameter. The function is expecting a parameter, and you can pass the index of whatever you want to it. Now I'm accessing some of my HTML elements. These are just HTML elements that have different IDs. And I'm saying that the text content of these elements, I want you to pass in the testimonials.text at any index that I send into this function. So if I pass in index 0, you are going to pass in this text for me into here. If I pass in index 1, you are going to pass in this text. The same thing for the next element, pass in the author's name. For the next element, pass in the dates. And then I trigger this function here, and I call current index. So it's going to pass in 0. So anywhere this function is called with current index, it will be seeing 0. Right? Just whenever you are rewatching, listen to what I'm saying one after another. This would make sense. Trust me. It may not make sense now, but it will make sense when you are rewatching. Now, I want to create some buttons. I will call it show next, some functions rather. I will just call them show next and show previous. And in this one, I will call current index. Remember, current index is still 0. Is equal to current index plus 1. So if I call this function on a button, when I click, it will add plus 1 to current index, making 2. That means, sorry, to add plus 1 to current index, 0 plus 1 will now become 1. That means it will move to this next line and inject the items of the next line into each of these HTML contents. So JavaScript is just logic. It's patience and logic, honestly. And then I want it to do the testimonials.length as well. Sorry, who has joined? Oh, Catherine. Yeah, so we are going to see this in action. So I'll call display testimonial function inside here and pass in the current index. Remember, plus 1 will always be adding 1 to our current index. So anytime I click this button, wherever I call this button, anytime I click it, it will look for the current index, whatever the number is, add plus 1 to it, And if he adds +1, it will call this function. What does this function do? It calls my HTML element and displays the text, author, and date of any index I'm currently on. I don't know if you're seeing how JavaScript builds logic literally. It makes sense, but at first it's like magic. I'm going to do one for previous button, and it's just literally the same thing. I will do function show previous, right? And then call current index again. Now, because I want to go back, I will do -1 plus testimonials.length, and I'll explain to you shortly why we are doing this. We are going to build out the HTML page now, attach all our functions to wherever we want to attach them, and then we are going to go over the explanation one by one on why we did this. So now let's build out the HTML page that will carry all these functions safe. So it's just going to be a small section. I want to add it. Where do I want to add itself? I want to add it, let's say after featured projects. Let's add it between here and here. So where is that? This is, welcome to our portfolio, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, here. So I'll just do a new section here. I'll give this section an ID of testimonials. I'll just give it an inline style. I'm not worried too much about creating CSS. I'll just call it text align, center, margin, 40px0. You guys should know what this means by now if you've done any part of the CSS we've done, right? Then I'll just write a nice h2 just as a heading. I'll say what people are saying. What people are saying, I'm just trying to build it nicely. Then I'll put a paragraph here. I'll give this paragraph an ID, and the ID will have testimonial.text, so that remember, JavaScript is going to be accessing this. I'll also give it an inline style. I'm not going to be writing classes for all of this one because they're just simple style. And the style, I just want to change the font style to italic. That's really it, right? It will be empty for now because JavaScript, remember, is going to inject into it whatever index we add. JavaScript will inject the text into it. So the same thing for the author. P is going to be empty, but I want the author's name to be displayed in bold, so I will use the strong tag. Strong is an HTML tag that helps you display things in bold. You can use strong, you can use B tag, anyone. So the strong will be empty because JavaScript will inject into this. I will give this strong an ID of testimonial author, and I'll have one more for our dates. What did I even call that again? Testimonial dates. Testimonial dates, and that's it. Then I'll add the buttons for the show previous and show this. So button, right? On click, when someone clicks my button, what do I want to do? I want to show the previous button. I don't know if this is what I called it. Show next and show previous. That's what I called it. I'll trigger this button, and I'll just call it the text of the button will be previous. This one I can give it the same class. That the class that those buttons were manipulating last week had. I don't remember the name. We called it JS buttons. Yeah, it can just look the same. It's fine. Yeah. And I'll create another button for next, show next JS buttons. Right? That's it. We have this here. So now let's circle back from the start. Like, if we're building this page, what we would have done, we would have created our HTML before we even go and start writing our JavaScript. So this section, we just added a new testimonial section, right? We gave it an ID of testimonials, and we just put basic styles and a title, what people are saying. We now created the 3 paragraphs for the text, the people who wrote the testimonial, and the dates they wrote it. We pass in those IDs that JavaScript is going to look for to inject, text content into this. We now call 2 buttons, one for previous and one for next, and call the functions on them. So now, building those functionality out, we created an index. We called it current index, right? Step by step. First thing is that we have our testimonials array, right? Our array has text, author, and date. Next is that we have our starting points, right? I'll actually be adding comments so that once I push to GitHub, the comments will help. Now, this one is our testimonial array. right? Current index is just our starting point. We want whenever we load our page, it will start from the first testimonial. So we set our index. Now, we are going to be creating a function. Essentially, this function is just going to help us to display whatever current testimonial index we are on. So we created a function, we name it display testimonial. We pass in arguments to that function or parameters. Shows that anywhere you call this function is expecting that you pass something to it. Inside this function now, this function is simply targeting our 3 paragraphs and changing their content to be the testimonials array. Any index we are, get the text of it. Same thing here, testimonial array, any index we are, get the author, and testimonial array, any index we are, get the dates. Now, we trigger the function here, display testimonial, right? So this one is just so that the function will start immediately, immediately our page load. It will initially display by default the first index, because current index is 0. So it will initially just go through our testimonial and look for 0 and inject everything into the 3 paragraphs. So this is just to trigger the first display. Now we created 2 additional buttons, one for previous and one for next, right? Now, to show the next one, basically this will move to the next message, right? And you can see that current index is initially 0. We are now calling current index plus 1. It will now make current index to become 1. If you add plus 1 to 0, that means it will now leave 0 and be on this. So anytime I click this button, add plus 1, whatever you are on, add plus 1, it will become 1, or it will become 2, or it will become 3, and that's what it will be displaying here, here, and here, like that. So we now added this as well. This one simply will just make it, whenever it gets to the end of the array, it will start from beginning again. So if I click show next and it gets to here, it will just go back and start here again. Next, 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 next. Standard, the same logic with previous. If we started from 0, if we say previous minus 1, it will cycle us back, right? This plus testimonials.length here, it just makes sure that we don't ever go to minus 1, because the thing is that if you are on index 0, if you now say 0 minus 1, it will now give you minus 1, but you don't ever want to go back there. So this math that we've just done here essentially is just saying if you are any index you are, let's say you are current index 2, minus 1, go back to 1. But if you become 0, 0 minus 1 will give you minus 1. So we just want to add the length of the testimonial. So if our testimonial is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we are essentially doing plus 5 here. So instead of seeing minus 1, it's going to just add 5 and become 5 again. I don't know if this math is mathing. The math is probably not mathing, but trust me, when you go back to this video and watch again patiently, you will see that this is not magic. Everything we are doing here makes sense, honestly. Everything we are doing here makes perfect and complete sense. But essentially, let's see if what we even did looks like anything. So what people are saying, I have an error, setting text content or properties of null. What was null? Did I not create something well? This looks good. Testimonials, everything is there. We have author, we have dates. Did I not spell it well? Testimonial text, testimonial author, testimonial dates. Oh, yeah, there was a typo. Yeah, so now you see we are displaying all our testimonials. Starting from index 0, it picks the first one. If I say next, uncut reference, current index is not defined. I think something is not seeing our current index. Did I not type it well? I think I've made a typo somewhere. I will just copy and paste all the current index in case there is a typo somewhere, because this thing, any little... Oh, see, I spelled current index. Can you see? So, yeah, everything matters, honestly. So, yeah. So, next, see, we are moving. Now, if we do, we'll go back. We'll start from 1, right? Same with previous. Let's load our page again. We start from Lola. Now, we are on current index 0. If we were to go back, we were supposed to be on minus 1. But because we came and added plus the length of our testimonial, which is 5, it will now take us back to 5 again. I don't know if this is making sense, why we did the math we did. But this is just a very efficient way of creating something like this if you wanted to. Just an example. Yeah. So we are going to look at more in-depth topic now on our photographers page. We are going to build the photographer page right now, right? Currently, we just have our header and footer, and that's it. So let's go into building our photography page. I'll close down all this and just open photographer.html. We've done header, footer, so it's just main that we need to do now. So in the main section, I'll create a class. I'm going to style this later. I will just call it photographer main. Inside of here now, I'll just do an H1 first. Meet our photographers. Let's say we also showcase our photographers on this page. Meet our photographers. And then after the H1, I want to add a section with a class name of photographer controls. Yeah. I want an input field here, and we'll see why I'm doing this. This input will be a search input because I want to be able to use one of those array methods to search our photographer. I think filter, right? Or is it find? One of them that we looked at that helped us to find that number that time. We'll use it to find one photographer. Obviously, it's going to be a type of text because I want the user to type a text inside. I'll give it a placeholder of just maybe search by name. So I want to give them the option to search by the photographer's name. And that's it. Right? Now I want a button. On click of this button, I'll call a function called search by name. And this function essentially, you see what I'm going to do here. I will write a little bit of JavaScript on this function. Get elements by ID. The ID is search input. And get me the value of that element. Right? Get me the value of that element. Search. I don't know if I want to use this class. I can style it later the way I want. For now, let's leave. So this is essentially what we would have done in JavaScript anyway. We are just doing it directly on the button because in reality, when you call any JavaScript event on a button, you can write JavaScript inside that same line, essentially. So onClick is a JavaScript event, and I'm calling a function normally. I can still target elements and pass into that function so that when I go to write that function, automatically any value that somebody type into this input field will be sent together alongside whenever I call this function. It's just the logic I've written here. Now, I'll create another one for showing all the photographers. On click, just render photographers. And the text I want is show all, not reset. I'll put another button on click. This is just me building what I want. When you are doing your own, you can do it anyhow you want. Me, this is how I want my photography page to look. So I'm just building the skeleton out, the HTML. And this function will be called sort by experience. So this is me trying to teach you people everything that we literally did just now with arrays, ordinary arrays, so that you see how to use it in real life. So the button will say sort by experience, right? And then I'll have one more button for one more functionality. On click to add a new photographer. And it will just say add photographer, just like so. Now we can do some nice CSS styling here and there for it. It's not necessary, but just so that everything is flowing and it still looks good. I'll style my photographer main. This is going to take our time. Honestly, I don't want to come back for a fourth section, but I really like us to achieve this thing we are trying to do today. So it's going to be a display of flex, flex wrap. These are just all CSS. I don't know, but I think we treated this right. Flex wrap. So if it exceeds, it should just wrap onto the next line. For every item, give them each a gap of 10 pixels for every item that will be in this photographer main container. Give it generally a margin bottom of 20 pixels and align all items to be center. Now I'm going to style the photographer controls. Hopefully I'm typing this thing well. And I want to start the input field there, so I can just target the input keyword directly, the input elements directly rather, not the input keyword. Yeah, we're running out of time. We'll have to come back for the fourth one, but I can target the input element directly. I'll just make it look nice. I'll give it a padding of like 6px top bottom, 10px left right. Border, I'll give our input a border of 1 pixel solid, just a light gray CCC. I'll give it a border radius just because it's our general style. All our stuff are curved of 4 pixels. Border radius, not border radius of 4 pixels. Then what else? I also want to style the button. So photography control, any button on the page, just give it this general style. I didn't ask for this, but well, I'll put what I want to put. So a background color of, let's just say, dark cyan. Is still pretty much close, to be honest. Dark cyan. Color of white. I don't want any borders on the button because by default HTML brings borders. Padding 6px top bottom, 12px left right. Border radius 4 pixels. And then finally the cursor will be pointer, the finger, because buttons should always ideally use pointers. Then on hover, I will just change the background color to teal, which is probably the same thing, yeah. So just slightly different when you hover. Then photographer itself, do I have a class like that? I'll create one more class. This other class, we'll use it in JavaScript. So you will see that you can even write CSS and use it in JavaScript still. So I just want margin bottom of, let's say, 32 pixels. Padding, and you see why we are doing this soon. 16 pixels. Box shadow. 0, just standard, same box shadow we usually do. RGBA 0, 0, 0.1, standard, nothing new. Border radius, I'll just give it 8 pixels is fine. Background color, yeah, FFF is fine. So HTML CSS is done. Our HTML, we've just added all these buttons. So I'm going to create a new JavaScript. I'll call it photographer.js, so that we are not mixing everything up, and I can then link it here just before the closing body. So it's going to be js/photographer.js, and if we check, we are linking to the right page now. So now let's start adding our functionalities. So first of all, I will create a photographer array. I'll just call it photographer data, and it's going to be an array of objects, and for each one they will have a name, right? Let's call this one Kemi Yusuf. They will have their years of experience. Let's say this one has 5 years. They will have their specialty. Let's just say portraits. And instead of location, I mean, I could keep the location to be fair, but yeah, I don't want to do too much. Let's just keep their image. Let's create an image for them, and we'll just pull from one of our images. So images/photographer1. I don't know if that's photographer1, to be fair. I think photographer1. So let's call Kemi photographer3 .png. Hopefully we are linking right. Images/photographer3.png. So the next one, let's give her photographer2. The next one, let's give him let's just call it like this. Let's give this one 10 years, and let's give this one 8 years. In no particular order, yeah. So this is just a photographer array we have now. Now I'll use classes here just so that we can deal with a little bit of, I'll use mostly classes and arrow functions. So I'll create a new class. I will say class photographer, so that we can use this class to build new photographers anytime we want to build. Remember, we said that's what classes are for, just like constructors essentially, right? So in this class now, we'll now construct, how we want our stuff to look like, our objects to look like. So we want their name, experience, specialty, and their image, pretty much. And then the same thing, we'll just say this.name, this.experience is equal to experience, this.specialty is equal to specialty, like that, and map them. I'm now going to say in here, now outside of our class, let's photographers be equal to, now we are trying to use .map method, if you remember correctly, because I want to get like different details of each photographer. So I will say photographer data.map, and for each photographer, right, return me a new photographer object. I know this is confusing, but please just bear with me. I'll explain. And inside this object, remember, we have to pass in these 4 things. So we want their name, experience, specialty, and their image. So what I've just done here, remember we have our array with like 3 different photographers inside, and they each have their names, their experience, their specialty, and their image. We now created a class, a photographer class, and we now constructed it that anywhere I call this class, creates a name, experience, specialty, and photographer, and image, for anywhere I call this photographer class. So inside this variable now, I'm just mapping our array, photographer data.map, for each person inside here, create a new object for them from this class using these 4 details, right? So new photographer using the 4 details, and the details should contain the name. So it's going to map out each person. So it will go Kemi number 1, get her name out, get her experience out, get her specialty out, get her image out. It will go again, Liam, get the name, this, but it's building it from this template we have created. Is looking at this data and creating a new person for us each time using the data here and these templates that we've constructed. Now that our function render photographers, let's create it. Remember, we called it here already. If you remember in our JavaScript, in our HTML, yeah, we have a function called render photographers. So now we are creating that function, and we use arrow functions. An arrow function. So this is how to create an arrow function, right? It's essentially the same thing as writing function render photographers. It's essentially the same thing as doing this. They are the same thing, but this one is a modern way and cleaner way of doing it. That's just it. So render photographers, and we want this function to expect something. So I want it to expect this photographers array. So maybe I'll just pass anything, I'll pass just to show that, just indicate that anywhere I call this function, you expect that you pass something to it. And inside here, I'll create a constant, I'll call it container, and I'll just use it to hold my photographer list. Photographer list, again, what's even photographer list? Photographer list is, where's photographer list? Sorry, please just hold on. I just want to be sure, yeah. I knew that I forgot something. So after this section, we want another section here. And this section, it will have a class of photographer list. That's it. We don't want anything inside it. So the only thing is that we just know that JavaScript will inject the list of photographers here. That's just what we know, right? We just know that JavaScript will inject the list of photographers here. Yeah, so JavaScript will use this to show all the list of photographers. Remember, all these things we did above, these ones were just input fields and buttons, but we did not really create any real section where JavaScript can pour in our, like if we want to show all our photographers together. So this photographer list now, in this function, render photographers, I've created an arrow function, and I just keep this to indicate that anywhere I call this function is expecting me that I pass something to it. So inside this function, I create a variable called container, and I say document, but let me teach you another dumb manipulation, query selector. This one, you can even select anything like class name into it, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Please, are you sure you're recording?
Well, I hope so. I honestly hope so. Yeah, I am. I hope so. Yeah. So yeah, so query selector, and we can select any class on our page. We can query and select it. That's what document.query selector just does for us, right? It will just, you can pass in a class name to it. The same way you do get elements by ID in the other side. We did it in portfolio, and it will look for an ID with that. It will look for any HTML element with that ID and return and hold that elements for you. It's the same thing here. We can even pass an ID here if we wanted. We can use get element by ID, but I'm just to show you query selector. That was it. So this query selector now, we passed in a class name of photographer list, and we are using query selector to access that class name here. Now I will say container.inner HTML is equal to empty, just in case anything was inside before. It's just a safe way. I must not do it, but I'm just trying to be sure that nothing is inside this container, that I'm trying to inject something clean into it afresh. So I'm cleaning up anything that was inside before. When our page load, I want it to be empty. Then I would inject into it. Now, I will now say array. Whatever I pass to this function, whenever I call it, I will map it. Array dot. So this is where we are going to use one of those loops that we did now. For each, right? For each item in the array, let me not say item because they are human beings. I'll just say for each photographer, I'll just do P because the word photographer is too long. Even here, I could have just done like this, P. P in this case will stand for photographer. So anything you pass in here, you can just do, if you pass P, for each one, P dot this. If you pass photographer, for any word you pass, you can use. So for each P, P just stands for photographer. In this case, I'm choosing to use P because it's shorter, right? I now want to construct what they will look like. This is a little complicated, and I know it's too much for you guys, but please just bear with me. So I'll construct something for them. I'll create a container called article, and I will do documents dot create a new element passing the ID of article to it, and then article dot class name. Sorry, this is not what I want to add. Dot class name. So if you remember what I did in that HTML, you will understand what is going on here now. Do you remember that in my styles.css, I have a class, among other classes, I have a class called photographer. But in my photographer.html, I only have a class called photographer name, another class called photographer controls, and another class called photographer list. So I never really use this photographer class anywhere. So this is where I'm using it now, right? I'm creating a new element, right, called article. And on that article, I'm assigning a class name to it of this photographer. So this class is automatically going to be applied to this article. So remember when we did template literals last week, I told you that Java ES6 introduced this thing that you do backticks and use $sign and and curly brackets. We did it last week. If once I upload last week video and you watch, you'll see what I mean. So this one, instead of writing strings like this, JavaScript ES6 introduced a way called template literals to easily write out things on a straight line instead of using string and plus to be concatenating and creating a word. You can just use template literals. It's the simplest way to do it, right? And in this template literals now, what do I want to do? So in between the open and close, I'll display the image of the artist, of the photographer. I will just say, so the same way we write our image in HTML. So p.image, so the photographer.image, I'll display an alt text for them. I'll just use their names in this case as the alt text. So it's going to be p.name. I'll give it a width of 200 and a height of let's say 250. Yeah. Of course, they are in pixels, but even if you don't specify pixels, by default it assumes pixels. Yeah. Then the next thing I'm constructing is I'll just construct an H2 that will hold their name, p.name. Then I'll construct a paragraph, and in that paragraph, I want their experience to be displayed in bold, so I will pass strong. So the last thing I want to do is, sorry, hold on. I forgot to add something, but I'll just add it here before now. Inside this class, remember when we were doing classes and constructors in our slide, after creating the constructor, we will now create a function after it. So I'll just create a function. I'll call the function describe to be an arrow function, because now we've graduated to using arrow functions. And this function will just hold a string that contains the details of the photographer. So I will just say this.name. So whatever the photographer's name is, so maybe Kemi Yusuf, I will say has this.experience, years of experience in her specialty. That's just it. So in here now, I can still call this function in another paragraph. and just say p.describe, and it will trigger that function. Anything that function is holding, it will display it here for us. Remember, we are still in our for each loop. So this thing will run for each item in this array. It's going to do for the first one, it will construct this out. For the second person, it will go again, loop around, construct this out for the person. For the third person, it will go again, construct this for the person. No matter the amount of times we have, it will keep constructing for the person, right? Again, I know it sounds like rocket science, but please don't be discouraged. Please, I'm begging you guys. So this is the end of this literal. Now, one last thing I will do is container.append child. Because I'm trying to remember, what is container? Container is just holding this section called photographer list. Is empty, right? That's what container is. Now, for every photographer that I create this new profile for, I want to append this profile into container. So this article now that is holding all these things, this article variable that is holding all these things, I will append it into container. And remember, what is container? Container is holding this. So that means the photographer will just enter in between here and here and stay there. That's just what I'm trying to do. So what I'm expecting from you guys is that just study it. Go back and study everything I'm doing here. You won't get it in one day. Trust me. There's no magic you want to do. You won't understand this right now as I'm teaching it. But study. This might be our longest video yet, but I'm trying to get it to finish in this class. So I will just trigger the function so that when the page loads, the function will be triggered. I don't think we'll have much now, but let's see. So basically, meet our photographers. This is just what we have. I feel like we could do with a little bit of CSS here, to be honest. Photographer dates is not defined. Photographer data, not dates. You see why I said everything matters? This is the issue. Class name is not a function. Okay, I've made another mistake. Maybe it's my what was it called? Yeah, this is where it is. It should be equal to, not, because what I did essentially, I called it like this, like, you know, when you are calling a function like this, you call the function and pass in bracket. So that's what I did. I'm just assigning the style of photographer into article. I'm not calling a function. So these are the little errors you run into, and you have to figure out what is the cause of it. You go back, you figure out, you go back, you figure out, pretty much. So right now, I don't think we have very much here. Show all, we don't have these functions yet, so they won't really do anything for us, to be honest. We have to build out our functions. So right now, going back to our JavaScript, I'm just hoping we are not making like mistakes that will now have to make us go back and start spending so much time trying to debug the issue. But then mistake is part of the thing. So this one is for initial rendering of the photographers. And I called it here render photographers, right? I called the function here. I hope I spelled it correctly. Render photographers. Yeah. So I'm passing in photographers, which is holding the photographer data.map, right? I actually feel like it should be showing the photographers now, but I don't know. Okay, actually it's showing the cards for each of them. Actually, it's showing that something is getting injected here, but it's just not showing the data. So I don't know if maybe it's the image that I'm not tracing well. I know it's in images / photographer 1.png. Yeah, I think I'm spelling it well. Anyway, let's move on. We are still building our functions. Anyway, let's build the other functions for search. So I will just say const search by name. That was what we called that function on the HTML. So obviously the user has to pass in a name. So this function is expecting a name. And so I'll create a new variable called filtered, and I'll use .filter. So I'll do photographers .filter. So now for each photographer, filter me their name. I'll do dot to lowercase. This is an inbuilt JavaScript method that converts everything to lowercase. Because the reason why you want to do this is that you don't know whether the user will on caps lock, you don't know whether they will on lowercase, you don't know whether they will be typing in mixture of different capital and small letters. So when you get the user's input, you want to convert everything to lowercase and then perform filter on it. So that, because JavaScript can be case sensitive, so it's always safer to convert user inputs to lowercase when you want to use it to check for things. Now, I will now say dot includes. I'm calling another JavaScript method. So if whatever the user is sending in, right? If whatever the user is sending in is inside my photographers array, right? So the same thing, I will convert to lowercase. So what did I do here? I'm converting the names of the photographers to lowercase, because if you check in the first place, some of them, K is capital letter, Kemi Yusuf, they're all capital letters. But when the user is typing, like I said, you don't know whether the user will be typing with capital or small letters. And if you don't convert to lowercase, if the user types capital letter, try to search for Kemi in only capital letters, and it does filter, it will not find it because it cannot find the specific case. Kemi is capital K, small EMI, capital Y, small u. So you have to convert both, each of the items to lowercase when you are searching, and whatever the user is sending into lowercase, so that there will be a proper comparison. And then we can now call render photographers again, which is this function that is responsible for bringing all our photographers back and then passing the filtered arrays to it. And it's going to render. Remember, this photographers function expects something. Anything you pass it, its function is just to take that thing and spit it out to you. So if we pass it all our arrays, it will take it and spit it out to us. If we pass it only the filtered arrays, it will take the filtered arrays and spit it back to us. Now you are seeing how we can reuse one function for multiple things. Now we have another one, sort by their years of experience. So sort by experience. We'll use that sort method. Now we are going to say photographers dot sort, where so AB is like parameter. So photographer dot sort AB, which is like you're just passing parameters that is going to sort against. Like you're passing that there is one value, a lower value and a higher value. There's two values that is going to be considering when it's sorting, right? So when it's sorting, sort from B dot experience to A dot experience, and then return the photographers that you've sorted out. So I will call, remember, render photographers, his job is just to take an array and render it in this format for us, right? So I'll call render photographers again. I'm passing these photographers I've just sorted, and it will render the sorted list out for me. So you're seeing that we are reusing this render function over and over again. And finally, the last function I want to look at is adding a photographer. Add photographer is going to be an arrow function again, and I'm just going to do const name is equal to, I'll give a prompt, just like we did alert last week. There's another way of alerting or prompting the user on screen. Alert is going to display something on the screen. Prompt is going to display something, but the user can enter something into that screen. And I will use the prompt to be asking the user to enter the details of the new photographer, and then I will use it to add into this our array using a new object, right? So I will say new prompt is, I will just say photographer name. I feel like I've made lots of typos here, and once we are done, we have to, go back and look at one by one. I just hope that what I'm doing works, but if it doesn't, I know I've probably made lots of typos here. So experience, the same thing. I'll give a prompt, but because experience is a number, I want to make sure that whatever the user is passing is only a number. So I'll call this special JavaScript function called passInt, so that any number the user type or anything the user type, it will convert, it will make sure that it's only a number. If it tries to type a letter and it's not an integer, this function will run and tell the user that is invalid, right? So passInt, still create a prompt and just tell the user to enter the years of experience. Same with specialty, is also a text, so enter your specialty. And finally, the image, I will just create a prompt and say image path, right? Now, I will now say I want to do a little bit of validation here, but next week we'll look more into this. But now I always like to introduce a little bit of the next week in whatever we are doing now. So I will now say if there is no name. So remember when we were doing if statements, we did something like this. So if this basically means that if name is not there, if name is empty, the person passes empty. Or remember we did logical or last week. Is not a number, is none means is not a number. Or the person tries to pass experience and they are not passing in a number to us. So this is called validation, and is a very important part of JavaScript as well when you're dealing with forms. Because granted, on the back end, you create your back end in a secure way that the user cannot just save any rubbish there. But it's also important as a front end developer that you know how to prevent the user in the first place from sending rubbish to the back end. It just saves everybody's time. It's better for performance, because by the time the user will send rubbish to your server will respond. Like, why not just prevent the user from doing that in the first place in the front end, so that if they ever make that request and it hits the back end, it's going to be the right thing, instead of returning error and doing further transactions and causing further performance issues for you and waste of time. So if name is empty, like it's invalid, or if experience is not a number, or the same thing if there's no specialty, or the user also did not pass an image, right? What do I want to do? I just want to return an alert. Actually, I can do all of this on one line. I don't even, because I'm not checking for multiple, I'm checking all my conditions on one line. I can just return directly without doing the curly bracket and just say alert, invalid input, please try again. Else, if they pass the right thing, I can continue my logic like this. I can just say new photographer, and I will use that class that I did up there. Now, this is the power of classes. New photographer will be equal to, remember, the new keyword and the name of your class, right? And then whatever things that the user entered, the name the user entered, the experience the user entered, the specialty the user entered, and the class the user entered. Now, what else do I want to do? I will call that my photographer's variable that is there. Remember, this is it. It simply just maps each photographer and returns it to us using the class templates we created. So I can call photographers dot push so that I can add this new photographer to those previously existing ones there. New photographer. And then I'll call render photographers again so that it can see this, it can refresh the page and give us back the new list with new photographers. I know this is a lot. Let's see if we made mistakes in the first place, because I feel like, yes, we are definitely making a mistake because it's supposed to be rendering. So let's start from our CSS and take it from the top. Hopefully the time we have will be enough for us to look at any mistakes we've made and then, you know, see all our stuff in action. So now, photographer name, display. Okay, I think I see the problem. I am definitely the problem. So this should actually be for our photographer controls. Our photographer name just has a simple class because, again, it's even a container. I just want it to have a margin of 0 auto and then padding of 20 pixels on the top and bottom and 70 pixels to the left and right. That's really it. I don't even think this is the issue. I feel like we might have more issues, yeah. But at least now the style is there, is properly there, right? So now, let's see what else is wrong. So our photographer main has the correct styles, photographer controls, display flex, flex wrap, gap 10, this, controls, inputs. Look at, you see, the name is controls. I gave it in HTML, but here I'm typing rubbish. So again, this is why it's important, because we don't even know where the issues are going to be coming from. So in our styles, controls, inputs, control button. So input is, the styles are correct. This is what I want. The buttons as well are correct. The hover class as well, I think they are correct. This is what I want. And then the final one is photographer. So let's see, our buttons should have updated now. Oh yeah, see the issue here. There is no hyphen. I think there's so many errors here, honestly. Okay, yeah, so now our buttons at least are looking like what we want them to look like, right? So we've dealt with the CSS errors. Let's deal with the HTML. Let's see if there's any errors in our HTML content. So now, this section, in the main section, we want a main called photographer's name, and an H1, say meet our photographers. Then a section called photographers control with an input of search input, type of text, placeholder this, button on click, search by name, passing the elements by ID, button on click, render photographers, right? And then, because this is our function, remember, when we put it here, we said that anywhere we call it, it expects something. So, if I call it here, I have to pass in something to it. So we just know that anywhere we call it is expecting to receive something. So in this case, expecting to receive photographers. And I think this is actually why it hasn't been working. Yeah. JavaScript is hell. Okay, that's not why. We still have more errors. Okay, we are dealing with them. This is debugging. Let's debug. So back to this. So on click, we call our render photographers. And we put in the photographers. We have our sort by experience button and add photographer button. And then after that, we have our photographer list. Okay. I feel like this is fine. I'm not seeing any errors here so far. So the problem should definitely be from the JavaScript. The issue was this right here. I literally wrote it like this. And that was the issue. Literally. That was it. So again, JavaScript for you. So this is what I've been trying to build out. If I search for maybe a maker alone, it brings out only a maker's profile. If I say show everybody, it shows everybody. If I say sort by experience, it sorts based on the person with the highest years of experience to the lowest years of experience. And if I try to add a new photographer, I can just add a name as this. Years of experience, let's say 20 years in the business. Her specialty, all photography, let's just put it that way. And then the image path, let's just say images / image 10.jpg, because I don't think I downloaded an image for a fourth photographer. And let's see. So yeah, you see, it gets added. So all that, this is it. So I know it's been quite intense, but it's just growth. With growth comes, the intensity of things will increase, and you guys will just have to calm down, learn, and try to understand. But like I've always explained, I'm still here every time you want to come back and understand something. If you wanted us to do a one-on-one and break this down together one after another, we will literally do that. But yeah, this brings us to the end of the class. I don't know if I should even say